Hello, in this video we're going to continue right where we left off in the previous network design video. We're going to get started by familiarizing ourselves with the tools necessary to complete each action and get things moving forward. You'll notice the change of scenery in this video. We have launched into the Ubuntu operating system and are going to set everything up for our server using this operating system. First, we need to understand who or what we are in this operating system. As you may have noticed by the default installation, you are not root user of this device. You have a name. It is not root. You are what we call a super user, and you're given the command sudo. Sudo stands for super user do, and effectively gives a regular user belonging to that group access to administrator-like privileges. The sudo helps resolve two main issues at hand. The root user could be deactivated so it can't be easily leveraged to do things you don't approve of, and users only in the sudo group could run administrative tasks, preventing anyone else from accidentally, let's say, erasing a library or overlapping necessary updates, things like that. Most of our commands that we will use throughout these videos will start with sudo. This is completely normal and necessary in most cases. Now that we've got an understanding of what we are, we can continue by opening the terminal. This can be found in the menu at the bottom left corner of the screen. If you can't find the terminal icon inside that menu, you can always type terminal at the top search bar. The first commands we will want to run are going to be run several times throughout this guide. This is the update and upgrade process. The two commands that we're going to enter in are sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. These two commands will do exactly as it says. One will grab the updates from the update list we have, and the other will upgrade them to their latest versions where necessary. We're going to add a -y at the end. This -y, if you will just tell the upgrade command to do yes on the initial prompt. In the previous video, I mentioned that I wanted a web server that can support videos of various types. I want to support many different formats as possible, so I'm going to want to install VLC alongside the server. So to do that, we'll enter in sudo apt install Apache 2 to get our web server. And for the video formats, we'll install VLC with sudo apt install VLC -y. And we're going to finish that part off by updating our dependency list for the next upgrade with sudo apt update, just like in the beginning. Now we have a web server running Apache 2 with VLC. That's exactly what we wanted. There's just a couple more things we need for this database to really make it work for our future projects. We'll need a database for accounts to be stored if we want to get registrations going. We're also going to need some security certificates for a more secure browsing experience. The database will be a quick and easy one to set up. Start with the command sudo apt install MySQL server, preceded with a Y. And we're also going to do sudo apt install for the PHP, the library for the Apache mod for PHP, as well as PHP MySQL. This will install the MySQL and PMA libraries and dependencies. These are what we will use to make our database. After it's installed, we can test it with sudo MySQL. It appears we have a clean install. We can close it with Ctrl-Z or by simply typing in exit. And we're going to check the PHP version with php-v. And it looks like we've got the latest update. We are at 8.1.2 for our system. Now there is an 8.3 update, but we are not going to worry about that right now. We're now ready to make a database for anything we might need it for. It's time to create a virtual host for our web server. This is going to be a new directory outside of the HTML folder, but inside the var/www directory. We will give this a custom name and set it to the web server to read from this directory instead of the HTML. Start by making the directory. In my example, I'll be naming it Riverbank. So to do this, we're going to do sudo mkdir, which stands for make directory, and then we're going to type the physical address. In this case, we need it to be in the var/www/riverbank. And that'll create the riverbank folder inside the var www folder. We must now give ourselves ownership of the directory and all the contents inside of it. To do that, we're going to do sudo chown, O-W-N, C-H-O-W-N. This stands for, exactly as it sounds like, change ownership. We're going to follow that by a -r, a capital R, then our name. What this -r does is it recursively cycles through all the directories and subdirectories inside the directory we specify following that. So in this case, it is our riverbank folder. So we're changing riverbank and all its directories and subdirectories into the ownership of rivers. Next, we want to create the config file for the web server. Sudo nano will do this for us. Nano allows us to edit and create files inside the system. In this instance, we are doing sudo nano etc apache 2 sites available. That is telling us we're going to put inside the apache 2 sites available folder the config file riverbank. We're presented with a blank window here. Of course, this is normal because we just created this file. There's nothing in it yet. To start it off, we're going to open up a virtual host and make a pointer to port 80, which is the insecure web server port. Below that, we'll enter in the server name. This server name is simply just going to be localhost. The server alias below that will be the DNS that we purchased earlier. Right now I don't have one, so I'm going to do website.com. And next we have server admin. This is the Apache 2 user. Mine is Rivers, so I'm going to type in Rivers at 127.0.0.1. The 127.0.0.1 address points to your local IPv4 public address. This allows us to keep the address inside this config file the same without having to change it in case our IP were to ever change for whatever reason. Next is the document root. The document root is the folder we just created for our web server. This is where the entire website and all its contents are going to reside. Finally, we have the error log and custom log. These are both set in the Apache log directory, and one is named error.log, the other is named access.log combined. So what this will do is if there's any crashes, any issues, any problems with the software moving forward, or maybe even the hardware, it will log it here, as long as it's related to Apache. Since we gave server name the value localhost, we must let the Apache 2 config know that we have named it to localhost. Enter in sudo nano etc apache 2 config, and at the very bottom we're going to add a line. To get to the very bottom really quickly, we can do control / and just type in line number 999 and it should go straight to the bottom there. And at the very bottom we're going to enter server name localhost exactly as we had it in our config earlier, and we're going to save it with control X and confirming with Y. To finalize everything, we have a sequence of commands that we're going to rely on for Apache 2 web server to set the syntax to default and set our custom name that we made earlier, test the changes we made, and reload the web server one final time. So let's do that. We'll do sudo systemctl reload apache 2, enter that, sudo a2d issite, we're going to set that to 000 minus default. If it says we have to reload the Apache, again, just process the previous command, reload Apache 2. Next we're going to do sudo a2ensite riverbank, and that'll be the custom name that we set earlier. And we're going to check the config test with sudo apache 2 ctl config test. And that should give us a syntax as everything is okay. Once we see everything is okay on this, we're going to do sudo systemctl reload apache 2. And it looks here, everything is okay. Now what's next? Let's see about masking that IP address with a recognizable hostname so people can find it easier on the web. Check out the next video where we'll go through the steps to masking the IP with a domain name as well as give it some added security certificates.